how do you become a writer? Like, how do you translate that speaking? Because you're powerful when you speak, right? Every word out of your mouth moves the crowd. How do you become a writer through that? Like, what's your process, I guess, for that, to write a book when your wheelhouse is something else?
Well, to boil it down into the most simple terms, you become a writer by writing.
Go figure.
Okay. So literally, this is the thing. We as quote unquote writers, we oftentimes can spend so much time organizing our thoughts, thinking about our thoughts, titling the book, coming up with an outline, figuring out the way we would like it to flow, studying, researching. We're doing everything except writing, except actually just sitting down and putting words on the paper. And for me, I know there are some friends of mine who are like for real writers, they're official writers, and they can organize their thoughts. And I mean, they can get chapter by chapter, one written after the other. That is not me. I'm not an organized writer in that way. I write based on what that day I'm inspired about in a particular verse that I might be writing about, or a particular thought that hit me in the middle of the night. I'm going to sit down and write those 500 words. They're going to be messy. They're not going to be grammatically correct. They're not going to be amazingly massaged paragraphs. I'm just getting the content on the page, and I will file that away. I don't know where in the book it's going. I don't have to organize it or title it or make it look amazing. It's just on paper. I will do that fairly regularly till I have all these pieces that I filed away 6 months ago, 3 months ago, the discipline of just getting it all on paper. And then I look at all these bits and pieces. And a lot of times I will see that there is a common thread that is running through 8 to 10 of these, or a dozen of these random paragraphs that I wrote. The common thread is grace or faith or redemption or whatever the common thread is. And when I put those paragraphs together and then start massaging them, there's a whole chapter right there. Or there's two chapters, or the fodder for a whole section of a book. So a lot of times I find that my encouragement to would-be writers is write.
Yeah. So you don't choose the topic first, even? It sounds like it's almost like you're just living your life. You're intentionally setting aside time to write your thoughts, write your feelings, write your experiences, but you're kind of sort of organizing them in a pile, right? And then when you're ready to go say, okay, well, what book has emerged? Are you kind of pulling it out of that? So you don't really like say, well, I'm going to write The Armor of God. This is the book I'm going to write, and I'm going to start outlining. Well, it's kind of like almost... You know what I'm saying?
It's kind of both and. A lot of those writing pieces might become individual articles, or they might become something for our website, or something that I use for a magazine that needs me to send an article in. But when I'm writing on a book topic, then yes, I am more organized, because like The Armor of God, like you mentioned, your wife doing The Armor of God, or Elijah, I know going in what my topic is, but I'm not necessarily writing it in sequence. There might be something that's over here in Elijah's story that's what the Lord gave me a thought about last night, or that's what's my research unearthed something that I want to just write on that. I don't know exactly how that's going to fit in yet, what chapter it's in and all that, but it's part of the package. I know it's going to be in here, but I don't necessarily write it linearly, if that makes sense.
And see, I think that's I got a bunch of friends that do books and publishing, and I'm kind of an extroverted, like random person in general. And for some reason, but I'm also married to the most organized human being on the planet Earth. It's
We're the same people. We have the same lives.
It has to be that way, right? That's what has to happen. And, but all my friends tend to also be these linear analyticals, right? And I think it's just because God is surrounding me with people to keep me from going off the rails. But I've always watched them write their books, and they're like, they've got their outline, and chapter 1's going to be this, chapter 3 is going to be this. Then they release it. And maybe I'm just like,
by those people.
I know it's unbelievable, but this process feels, if you get to the same place, you get to the same place. Right. So, as long as
you have to use the process that works for you, instead of trying to fit into the mold of what works for them. I have so many friends, man. They are writers. I have a friend named Liz Curtis Higgs. She might have a book contract for 5 or 6 books at a time. I would never, ever put myself in that situation, but she just knows where she's headed. And she trusts her weight as a writer to be able to imagine and create, whether it's fiction or whatever she's writing. Man, I'm a 1 book at a time person. And most of the time, I don't even tell my publisher that I have a book until I'm about halfway to 75% done with it.
That way, you're not going to get lost in the muck and mire of your own piles of paper, right?
That's right. And of course, publishers, they have to put a deadline on it because they have to market, they have to think about when it's going to release and all that. So of course they have to have timing. And I want to be able to write freely without the pressure of that time on me until I've got that cadence going where I know that I know where I'm going with this. I know where I'm headed, and I know I'm going to be able to.
You can actually make the deadline that everybody agrees to.
That's right.
Let me ask you.
That being said, can I just slip in this little comment? Because I just mentioned
Go ahead.
publishers, and for any would-be writers that happen to be listening to this, I just want to say that we're living in an age now where self-publishing allows you that freedom to be able to go at your own cadence, and is such a high quality way to be able to produce a book, where 20 or 30 years ago, you almost had to have a publisher to do it. You don't anymore. None of those restrictions need to confine you. You can publish your own book. And honestly, with the way social media is now, you can almost do better in terms of the reach of your material than if you had a big publishing house behind you.